Hey everybody, Mowers and Blowers here, and today I'm snowblower flipping. I was checking Craigslist, and you know, as we're getting in the late September months, we start thinking about snowblowers. So I saw this one on Craigslist for like 20 bucks, I think the guy wanted. I text messaged him, and he's like, you know what, why don't you come and get it for 10? And then at the end of the conversation, he's like, you know what, just come and get it. Guess he just wanted it out of his yard, you know. So it's a Briggs & Stratton Craftsman, 5 horsepower, 22-inch cut, 4-cycle snowblower. It's obviously old, you know, single stage. But like I said, I got it for free. Anyway, the problem was it didn't have a gas cap, and I made this makeshift one because I don't exactly have, you know, these gas caps, you know, in stock, you know, unless I worked on it before. Anyway, there's a choke lever over here that's supposed to stick out and have like a elbow bend that you can bend it to choke or run. So that, you know, I need to fabricate something that lets that work. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to start it because it's either always in run or always in the middle or always in choke. Well, you have to be able to adjust it whether or not it's, you know, choke or run. So I'm going to have to take this panel off just to access that area. I did try to start it before, and it, you know, starts and then it stops. So the carburetor definitely needs to be cleaned too. So I have to clean the carb, fabricate something that allows the run choke lever to work, and you know, that'll work for now. And we'll see what happens. So it's easy. It's just 1, 2, 4 bolts. It might be missing some other bolts, but we can find them. 4 bolts have been removed, and this panel just comes off. Well, all this other stuff is connected to it, so I'm just gonna like rotate it to the side or something so I have access. Even better, I will tilt this upwards so I have access to the carburetor. Everything looks pretty good. Looks relatively clean too. You can tell it's probably been serviced before because, I mean, you know, something this old would have all kinds of crud around it, and the carburetor actually looks pretty new. And it looks like I'm going to try to remove those 2 bolts, get the carburetor off, and check it out. So after looking at this, I've decided that I'm not going to go through the trouble of removing the carburetor because I have pretty decent access to, you know, visually of the entire bottom of the carburetor. So what I'm just going to do is take the fuel line off and plug it up, you know, with a screwdriver. And so that will prevent all the fuel from leaking out, right? And then take the nut off of this float bowl and remove it so that I could gain access to the float and the pin and the jets and stuff. I could still clean it that way. So instead of removing this entire carburetor, it's probably less trouble. But then every time I say that, it ends up to be more trouble than it's actually worth, and I end up taking it off anyway. But we're going to give this a try anyway. I removed the hose, fuel line I mean, and the bowl nut. And usually the bowl nut, you need to look through it and see if it's clogged. You find that hole, and there you see, it's clear. Nice. Now I'm going to take the bowl off and see. Very clean bowl. Relatively clean float. Very clean pin, which goes on here. Float bowl has some varnish on it, the color, right? Remember to put all that in there so you don't lose it. So there are, I don't know if you can see it, but that's the hole where that pin goes into, and where the float goes up and down depending on how much fuel you have in the bowl. and that opens and closes the hole that's in here that allows fuel. This is where the gas line was going in. Fuel goes in there and it comes out that hole. The pin is what regulates how much fuel goes into the bowl. The float bowl, when the bowl is full, it pushes the float up, pin closes the hole in there and stops the fuel from going in there. Fuel is sucked up through this jet there into the carburetor, and that's how it works. So there's a hole in here and a hole in there, and I'm going to spray it out with carburetor cleaner. So you got a better view of the holes there. That's the bottom of the carburetor. Like you see on the left hole, there's a little rubber seat in there with a hole in it. That's where the pin goes. And then there's a jet over there in the middle. The bigger hole has 2 holes in there. The one on the top is the one that is the reservoir for where the fuel goes up the shaft of the carburetor to where the choke flap is. So I'm just gonna stick. I'm just gonna use this gunk carburetor parts cleaner and blast in there with that. So here's the float. Pin just goes right there, so it almost hangs like that. You have to be careful, right? You have the pin go into the hole. That. And then the long pin that holds it into the axle. Goes through like that. See? So I blasted this out with some carburetor cleaner. It's nice and clean. Just fit that over the gaskets. Make sure you don't get carburetor cleaner over the gaskets because you'll never get it on like I can't right now. Looks okay actually. This was that nut bolt, the float bolt nut that had the hole in it. It's clean and cleared. Put that on. And that ought to do it, you know. Put the gas line back on again, and that ought to do it. That's a carburetor clean. I was fortunate that this carburetor isn't very dirty at all. So I mean, I've seen that 1,000,000 times worse, you know. And you know that there are people who don't maintain their equipment, and you know that's when they run into problems, you know. You don't do too much pressure on this. I know that not that tight, but it's snug enough. Here's that fuel line. Since it's tilted like that, fuel wasn't coming out. Just pop that back on. Put the clamp back on. So that ought to do it. Now I'm going to address this part here. It's cracked. See? Big crack. However, unfortunate that this part here is that this has this area here where I can simply put a screw right in there to hold this and that corner together. So with physics, leverage and all that, strength and durability on a corner, this will do the job. So I just used my electric screwdriver and pounded a couple of screws in there. It's solid, man. And this here is just superficial, you know what I mean? As long as it stays together, good to go. Okay, next thing I'm going to address is the choke thing. This is the choke, right? I need to find something that will fit over here so that I'll be able to turn it through here. So what I've jigged now is that remember, I need to fit something over there, right? So I found this you know, it's an old screwdriver, right? And I had this thing in it. That looked like perfect, you know? So just give it a try. And it fits perfectly. Look. Amazing. So didn't fit through here, so I made the hole a little bigger. So now I'll be able to just turn it. You know? That'll work. Just like that. Choke, run. I'm going to put this stuff together again and see what happens. So I just put everything back again. I had a couple of holes here in the primer bulb that was leaking air. It's designed to have one hole here so that when your finger goes over it, it makes the vacuum and it sucks it up. But it wasn't really sucking up, so then I tried to do the electric start. As you can see, I screwed a bolt in here, so now look, you can do run, you can do choke. Needs to be on choke. So it doesn't seem to be getting any gas in here. I pulled the gas line out and it's poured out gas. So something's blocking inside the carb. So there's more than meets the eye. I think I have to, and this is the primer bulb hose that this is connected to primer bulb. And look, I blow on it or suck on it. Nothing's coming out. So something is blocking the carburetor. So while I put everything back thinking that I didn't have to take the carburetor off, I could just spray it real quick because it looked clean, there's more to that carburetor than what appears. So I'm going to have to take all this apart again and remove the carburetor. So after further review, after disassembling everything again, taking the entire carburetor off, remember what I told you about how don't get carburetor cleaner on gaskets, otherwise they'll balloon? Well, I should listen to my own advice. I can't get this gasket to fit if I tried. Anyway, I have to wait until that shrinks back again. But anyway, I think I found the problem. It wasn't getting gas at all because the seat in here is shredded. I know you can't really see it in there. Can you? Yeah, you see that inside there? There you go. I tried to blow in here. It's shredded, so air's not going in there. So if air's not going in there, fuel's not going through there. So if fuel's not going through there, it's not going to start. So I'm going to have to find, I don't exactly carry this around, but I have a few lawnmower carburetors that may have a good seat. It's the little rubber round grommet looking thing in there that has a hole in it that allows the fuel to go through here and come into the float bowl to fill up the float bowl with fuel. So when I took this back off, I took the float bowl off and there was no fuel in there, which means that fuel wasn't getting in here, you know. The flow was tremendous because, you know, I made a mess. So it's definitely the seat in here that needs to be replaced. Just wasn't getting any fuel. anyway, I'll have to see if I can find one, and then see you guys in a bit. Okay, so I had a old seat that I had from an old, believe it or not, lawnmower carburetor, and I managed to wiggle that out and put it into this one, and it started to flow fuel just fantastic, you know. So I put all the panels back, and it looks pretty cool, you know. I mean, I was missing all the screws basically, so I basically just found some screws with the correct width, and they all mismatch and stuff like that. Still missing 2, but I got the important corners, you know, that will keep it intact and in place, and you know, relatively tight and stuff. So I put everything back, and electric start, and let's give this a try. Let's see. Forgot to put it to choke. Well, maybe I should prime it a little. That might work. That seems to work okay. Or maybe not. The plot thickens. So sometimes I have a brain fart. Duh. So, nice little snowblower, single stage, works great. Electric start for free. See you next time on Mowers and Blowers.